for us on this show. But welcome back to Puck on the Parkway. James Burley with Daniel Rebane talking New Jersey Devils. A great Western Canada Pacific Northwest road trip now with the Seattle Kraken mixed in, but they come home to a defeat to the Winnipeg Jets in the Ring of Honor night for Johnny McLean. An interesting couple of weeks for the Devils, some injuries and a big trade that we've got to get into. Dan, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I know both of us have been swamped today. We've had a bunch of news with the New York Red Bulls that we've been trying to get out there. So I had to hop on a pod and talk some news about the Devils because we'll get into it right now. But they had a big trade last night before their game with the Winnipeg Jets.
An eventful day for teams that play in the Newark area. Let's just leave it at that if you don't want to talk more soccer. But the biggest news is obviously the Ondrej Palat trade. Going back, reuniting with the GM in New York with the Islanders after his time in Tampa Bay. The two-time Stanley Cup champion Palat was traded to the Islanders for Maxim Siplakov alongside a 2026 third rounder and a 2027 sixth rounder. But more importantly than getting Siplakov, Dan, is obviously the roster cap relief that this gives for the New Jersey Devils. They'll now have an additional 3.25 million, I believe, because they're taking on the Siplakov contract.
7-5.
7.5, excuse me. They have a massive weight lifted off their shoulders, and now going into the end of the season, they have at least 6.89 million, I believe, available to them, roughly ahead of the trade deadline. And should Luke Hughes not come back from injury for the rest of the season, that's an additional 9 million that they could potentially play with. Luke Hughes, of course, going on long-term injured reserve after his injury against the Calgary Flames on Monday, January the 19th. Dan, we've been talking about Ondrej Palat for I can't even tell you how long. It's been an important player in terms of his stature in the locker room and some of the things he does as a two-way player. But at this point in his career, 6 million, way, way, way too much money for that player. The Devils finally move on from that contract. It's a good move from Tom Fitzgerald. We've been very critical of him, but this is a very good move and an unexpected one, I might add, Dan.
Yeah, and to get off his full contract, was a big plus for the Devils, and to only give up a third, like a third's a good pick in the grand scheme of things, but to give up a third and a sixth to basically get off of Ondrej Palat's contract, plus you get a capable NHL player who we'll get into a bit more and only has 2 points this year, but he's a guy that has shown, especially last year in his rookie year, that he's a capable scorer. So to get off the deal of 6 million to free up that cap space, almost 4 million basically, and you don't really give up much. I think that was a massive win for New Jersey. I think this deal basically came down to convincing Ondrej Palat that hey, he doesn't have to move. He doesn't have to move his house. He gets to travel to Long Island to go play games, and he's still kind of in the area with his family. So for the Devils, I think it was a massive win to get this deal done, and now it's not about this deal specifically, but what is next for Tom Fitzgerald? Because sure, Maxim Siplakov, getting him back will be a nice addition to the bottom six, maybe even the middle six. But what's in the cooker for Tom Fitzgerald? What did he free up this cap space to do? So that's kind of what I'm interested more in heading going forward.
Absolutely. You don't get rid of that big of a contract burden with the intention of just letting that space fester. You got to fill that with a big time player. And I think with the way that the Luke Hughes injury has panned out, unfortunately, they lost their top offensive defenseman, and that's allowed for a guy like Dougie Hamilton to fire back into the lineup and has played really great since being scratched, since being more openly involved in trade talks, and he's responded like a real pro to that. He had an 8 game point streak, excuse me, including when he was scratched in the middle of that. So that's kind of changed things as well too. So maybe they don't go for another defenseman, maybe they don't go for another depth center because albeit Cody Glass did leave that Winnipeg game with an injury after blocking a shot, but
Oh
he has
man,
been fantastic. That line that I'm choosing to go with the diner line as the nickname for it. I heard
that's a
breakfast
good
line. I
one.
heard, yeah, I think the diner line's the best one. It's Jersey. Come on. But I think that makes the clear direction for this team to go in is a scoring top six forward. That has got to be
Mhm.
what they're going after, especially since Jack Hughes has only got one goal in his last 17 games. We're going to get
Yeah.
into who they're going after. Let's talk about what this trade actually means. Ondrej Palat in the morning skate with the Islanders today penciled into their top six. So a bit of a similar role for him with the Islanders. It seems it's maybe comes as a bit of a shock to Devils fans. My Islanders friends fans, some guys who I know who cover the team, were pretty excited about getting Siplikov off the contract. He only just picked up his first assist of the season not too long ago. He's only played in 27 games, but only 2 points. Doesn't really bode well for a player, but he's coming off an injury. He brings more size than most Devils forwards have to this point. So I think, put him on a line with a Paul Cotter type. Maybe they mesh together well. But again, this deal was not about bringing in Siplikov. It was about
Mm.
moving on from Palat. In retrospect, an awful contract that they gave him, but without him, you maybe don't beat the Rangers in that
Mm.
2023 playoff series, and
Yeah.
and there's a few other moments from him with his Devils career, but unfortunately, he's always going to be remembered for that heavy contract and for what he wasn't able to provide offensively, Dan.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's kind of ended this way, but he had his good memories, like you brought up with that New York Rangers series. I mean, there were a lot of moments in that series where if Ondrej Palat's not on this team, Devils don't win in seven. Um, so we'll remember the good memories. We'll obviously remember, the bad contract that Tom Fitzgerald gave out after not signing Johnny Gaudreau. Rest in peace to him. Um, but yeah, finally the era is over. The Ondrej Palat era is over in New Jersey, and now Tom Fitzgerald, you got the cap space open. What are you gonna do, brother?
We've spoken about three players that a lot of other folks have spoken about in terms of who the Devils should go after. I don't even have to say their names, but I'm gonna Ryan O'Reilly, Steven Stamkos, and Nazem Kadri. Of those three, do you think that this is where Tom Fitzgerald is going to point the Devils towards? I mean, everybody seemed to ahead of the going back a few years here, but ahead of the Timo Meyer trade, everybody
Mm.
seemed to be saying the Devils should go after Timo Meyer, and where there was smoke, there was fire. That's what ended up happening. This kind of feels the same way, where it's been the same three players just mentioned up over and over again as potential suitors for what this Devils team is trying to do. Who would be your pick and why? And is there another player you want to throw into the discussion?
Yeah. Again, I'll harpen back to what I've been saying a lot in these type of videos where we talk about trade targets, and it's Nazem Kadri for me. Not only is he a center and he can give relief to Jack Hughes in the face-off dot, but he's just a proven goal scorer in the playoffs. He brings that dirty kind of radish play that the Devils are sorely missing. Like they just don't have anybody that's gonna muck it up in the corners or muck it up after the whistle. Timo Meyer does it occasionally, but he doesn't do it enough where you're like, man, it's a real pain in the butt to play against, right? You bring in a guy like Nazem Kadri who in his young career or in his early career with Toronto, he was getting suspended a lot in the playoffs, and that kind of cost him. But the Devils need that type of player on their roster and in their top six to kind of, take the attention away from a Jack Hughes, a Jesper Bratt. When you're being hounded by a guy like Nazem Kadri, that gives a couple more seconds for Jack Hughes to make a play and possibly score a goal that could mean you winning a series in the playoffs. So I think that's the type of guy they go for. Obviously, it's going to be harder to go for the Nashville guys since they're playing. I mean, Steven Stamkos has turned it on since our last video where he's just scoring every game, hat trick here and there. Ryan O'Reilly's playing really well. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Maybe they even add down there. I heard that there was a rumor that, people thought that Palat might have been going to Nashville. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I know, Calgary's not going to be going anywhere. So Nazem Kadri's the guy for me. And to add a guy, maybe Jordan Kyrou from St. Louis. St. Louis looking to kind of retool their roster. Kyrou's on a desirable contract for teams around the league. Put him on the wing next to Jack Hughes. I mean, that would be a fun duo. Those two working together for 82 games in the playoffs. So definitely someone to throw out there.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly is a point per game, and he leads the Predators. I can't believe it that he would arguably be like in terms of just looking at his contract would be a little bit more affordable than the likes of Stamkos or
Oh,
Kadri.
of course, yeah, he's making
But
4.5 million.
exactly, but Kadri's got 35 points to this point of the season, and Stamkos has got 25 goals now since he's turned it on. Jordan Kyrou, he's got a cap hit of 8.125, so they'd have to figure out something there if they want to go that direction. And he's only in year three of his
Mm,
contract, so that would have to be a big blow up for the Blues to part ways with him. Not that that is unlikely or seriously wouldn't happen, but that's just a way of looking at things. I think if you have O'Reilly, that's obviously one of the best two-way players in the league. You get
yeah,
an intangible in the face-off dot as well. But Kadri, of those guys that you mentioned, including Kyrou, adds another physical element and bit of snarl to his game that
mm,
really the Devils just lack. And the player that was, I already mentioned him a moment ago, but was kind of brought in to provide some of that spark was Timo Meyer, and we haven't seen that type of player in Timo Meyer since he became a New Jersey Devil. Outside of that first playoff run, I would say, and not that he's been bad. I think he's been arguably snake bitten in these last few games. He had a ton of good scoring opportunities,
oh
all
man,
on that road trip, and just feels like he can't buy a goal lately. I mean, he's one of several. I know Jesper Bratt scored against Winnipeg, but he's been one that the Devils have just not been able to get going to a degree that they would like. Hughes has been playing phenomenally, but still clearly is not back to his full self with one healthy hand. He's been
yeah.
scoring points here and there, but just one goal in his last 17. So it has to be someone who can maybe shake up the locker room a little bit. And I kind of agree with you that Kadri represents the best opportunity to do that. So with that said, let's talk a little bit more about that road trip because they look so good during uh, parts of it, really. They
Yeah,
clawed their way to three wins, a 2-1 win in overtime against Calgary, a 2-1 win against Edmonton, where they shut out Connor McDavid for the first time in 17 games. He didn't
yeah,
record a point. Fantastic defensive effort. And then they almost let it slip against Vancouver, but held on late in a absolute roller coaster of a game. That
yeah.
second period, they really started to bite their nails, but shut it down in the third
Mm.
with an important late goal on the power play from Connor Brown, and just Brown has been great in this last stretch as well, but mostly it's been what I'm calling the diner line. Gritsuk, Hamanaho, and Cody Glass have been responsible for 6 goals in the last 5 games for New Jersey. They're out shooting their opponents when they're on the ice. They have more scoring chances. Hamanaho has been a breath of fresh air. Talk about changing the locker room and bringing another element to disrupt the team in a positive way. I mean, look no further than Hamanaho. He's got 2 goals and multiple points since joining. He just looks like a player who's mature beyond his years, Dan.
Yeah, he looks the part, and I feel like that was one of his kind of, positives coming out of Finland. Like he went into his Finnish team and just felt like he was a veteran player as like a rookie in Finland. Like last year, also putting up points. Like the past couple of years, he's looked like one of the best players on his team in Finland. So coming over this year, I feel like he talked about kind of trying to be more defensive early in the year down in Utica, and that's kind of what hampered his uh, offensive production to start the year. But I mean, the past couple of months down in Utica, I mean, he was scoring left and right, putting up the points here and there, and finally got that call, and he hit the ground running. I mean, he's been one of the best players, if not the best players on the team on both sides of the ice. I mean, you can see his 200-foot game is there. Not the fastest guy, but I mean, you saw it on that partial breakaway last game that he still has the bit of wheels to kind of get through and get on a breakaway there. And what a finish. I mean, go 5-hole on Connor Hellebuyck like that. Vezina winner, Hart Trophy winner last year. You're going 5-hole on him. So, I mean, talk about a breath of fresh air. I mean, he's one of the best players right now. And you can see why, Devil fans, including both of us, have been waiting for him to get over to the NHL.
And I think he's surprised even the likes of us because while he started to get going in Utica after a bit of a slow start, he became their points leader. I still didn't think he was going to come in and activate that line the way that it has. Gritsuk and Glass have been great this year. They've punched above their weight in certain areas
Yeah.
of their game, but then adding Hamanaho just added an additional element. I hope that Cody Glass's injury
Oh
from
my
that
goodness.
Winnipeg game isn't
Yeah.
serious because he was playing lights out, man.
He could
He
take
was
my
so fun
ankle
to
if he
watch.
wants.
Sorry?
I say he could take my ankle if he wants.
Well, look, if that's what it takes, I mean, I don't really have good body parts to give. I've been banged up from playing sports in my childhood and growing up, but uh, if that's what it takes, man, I would do it too because Glass has been not only has he put up the points and had a 3-point night against Vancouver, but he has just been absolute dynamite to watch. He's been doing things on both ends of the ice and has really cemented himself as a worthy piece as a third line center. And I think that they've been the fourth line, but they've been playing more minutes than that third line that Paul Cotter was centering, and then they brought Glendening back in the lineup when the Palat trade was announced just minutes into that Jets game, and Palat was seen in street clothes before it started, and that started all those rumors, and it got everybody talking, and then minutes later it was confirmed he'd be heading to the island. Um, I think as far as the future of that team goes and that roster build, if they can add another one of those top six pieces that we've been talking about, I think that makes the fourth line, the bottom six, even better.
Mhm.
Assuming, knock on wood, Glass's injury isn't too serious, it would be his third injury of the season already if he has to miss some time for it, which is super unfortunate because he's just been so good.
Yeah.
He could bump down to the fourth line, officially what would officially be the fourth line, or they find another piece like a Cotter to play in that as that center, and just immediately the lineup is more full. And you have four lines banging all night. You don't really lose anything when certain guys are on or off the ice, and that's been a bit of an issue. Not when that Glass line has been on the ice because they've been awesome. It's kind of been, can the top six also be supplying the
Yeah.
team with goals? It just hasn't really worked out. We've mentioned Nashville a few times. In their next game tomorrow night, when this comes out, it'll be tonight. The Devils take on the Predators at home before they head over to Ottawa, and then they come back home for a couple of games against Columbus, and then the New York Islanders. They'll find themselves against Ondrej Palat again. So, a handful of games, just four before the Olympic break, which starts on February the 11th. Tom Fitzgerald's got his work cut out for him in terms of bringing in a player. Do you think they do this before the Olympics, during the Olympics? About when do you see that happening? Because they're running out of time here. They're only a handful of points outside of the playoff spot in the Metropolitan Division. They ended the night against Winnipeg 3 points back, but unfortunately, that gap is going to get bigger and bigger if they don't change something quick.
Yeah, I think that he's trying to get this done before the Olympic break because I think I saw out there was a report that there was an update and that they're gonna have a roster freeze during the Olympic break. So like, or at least no trades allowed during the Olympic break. So if that's the case, I think he's got to try to get it done beforehand because when they get back, I think it's a week or 2 weeks before the trade deadline. So. I think, you have about 2 weeks right now until the Olympic break. So I think he's got to be working the phones right now, trying to get something done. Whatever you did to free up this cap space, you got to get it done now. You got to give whoever you're bringing in as many games as possible to impact, the rest of the schedule because you need as many points as possible.
The NHL trade deadline is on Friday, March the 6th. The Olympic break will end on February the 22nd. That's when the gold medal round and third place game, or the bronze medal game, I should say, is scheduled to take place. So that gives about, like you said, 2 week, actually a little less than 2 weeks. That gives you 12 days to sort that whole thing out. And
Yeah.
that's a really small window to get it done. It's a small window now too. We'll see what Tom Fitzgerald has in mind. It's got to be quicker
Mhm.
than slower because if that doesn't happen in time, this season will have been an entire waste. And then when you lose games like you do to the Winnipeg Jets, who are 30th out of 32 in the NHL at home ice after a
Got swept by
positive,
them.
sorry,
Swept by
swept.
them.
Yes, that's two regulation losses to the Winnipeg Jets, both home and away. And when you come back from a positive road trip where you played four solid games. They couldn't get it over the line against the Kraken, but they looked decent for most of that game. You get
Mhm.
6 out of 8 possible points, and you come home against what should be a slam dunk of an opponent, and you fail. Again, they left that game super late. a great third period where they fought back. They got a late consolation goal at the end of the second. They were going into the third down too, and then they fought for it but couldn't get it over the line. How many times, Dan, have we seen this season the Devils play a team that they should be better than, and then just find a way not to claw themselves out of a hole that they've dug because they're gone down early in the games. When they go up early in the first and second periods, they're
Hmm.
undefeated. When they
Yeah.
have a lead going into the third, they're the best third period team in the NHL. They've, I believe, 17-0 when they have a
Hmm.
lead after two periods. It could be 18 now. I'm not 100% sure on that, but either way, undefeated after leading with two periods. They've got to be able to start games better because that's still not a big enough number. I recall I'm old enough to remember just 3 years ago that they were the best comeback team in the NHL with 26 comeback
Oh
wins, and
man.
they just seemed like you just knew that they would come back if they were down a goal or two. That you just knew that they were going to score a goal. You just knew that if they were able to get that game in overtime, they were going to win it in OT. They just don't really have that same sort of mentality and aura about them at the moment.
Yeah, it's been a long time since that season where it's like when they've pulled the goalie. When was the last time they scored a goal with the goalie pulled? Like I feel like it's been forever since that's happened. And like you said, that 22, what was it, 22, 23, or is it
223.
21? Yeah, that season they would you knew they were gonna they were gonna magically
You just knew.
force they're gonna will the puck over the line and get a point at least out of the game. So, that could come down to be the difference from getting into the playoffs and going home early, going to Cancun. So, they have to figure out ways to kind of get these, fight their way and get points, and every point is going to be critical, especially in the Eastern Conference. Like, look how close and tight the Eastern Conference is. Like, you lose one or two games and you're in the basement. You win two games and you're close to a wild card spot or third place in the Metro. So every game matters, every point matters up until this point. I think we're at what are we at 29 games left? So, everything counts. So, if they're not on their A game, they have to go find their B and C game, The B and C games of this team right now is just not good enough and that's what needs to improve.
Maybe a guy like Nazem Kadri would be able to provide a tool or two to help you find your B or C game. The Devils have 56 points through 53 games. That's good enough for sixth in the Metropolitan Division, 5 points out of third place, which is held by the New York Islanders, who have a game in hand. They're 9 points back of the Boston Bruins, who have played an additional game for the final wild card spot. Doesn't look good. And when you lose a game at home to the Jets, I mean, that was deflating. Because I'll tell you what, I felt pretty deflated watching them lose at home to the Hurricanes the way that they did when they had that game for the taking. If they had just gotten a goal in the first or second period, you
Yeah.
felt like that game was there. It was 2-1 for a portion in the third, and they couldn't hold on to it. But then they went on the road and won, I felt, some fans back with how good they looked. But then you go home and you just fall flat against the team that you have to be beating. You just have to at this
Yeah.
point in the season. They're running out of time. But like you mentioned, things are really, really tight. I read someone responded on Twitter to the article I tweeted out after the Vancouver game and or maybe the Kraken game, I think it was when they lost, and someone was like, you say that they're only 3 points out of the playoffs at this moment. At that point, they were only 3 points out, but they're a first round exit. I would honestly beg to differ that they'd be a first round exit. You finish third in the Metropolitan Division, you're going to get either the Penguins or the Islanders in round one. Acknowledging full well that the Islanders spanked the Devils 9-0 just a month ago, and that the Penguins have taken care of the Devils on multiple occasions already. Those are winnable series. On
Yeah.
paper, the Devils should beat those teams pretty handedly. And if they go into the playoffs playing their best hockey of the season and they get that momentum, they have an additional piece in their top six that they've not been able to replace since they sent away Tyler Toffoli. Um, then it's anybody's game in that first round. And honestly, the Devils could benefit on going into an opposing barn and being the underdog and having low expectations from the season. If people are counting them out as a first round exit, that's kind of some house money you'd want to play with. It's the same sort of mentality they had going into 2022-23, where they
Yep.
were a few points ahead of the Rangers in the standings. I believe they were 5 points ahead of the Rangers, but everybody was like, this Rangers team's been around the block. They'll probably win this series. And the Devils proved them wrong after going down 2-0 in games
Yeah.
one and two. Obviously, the real obstacle is the guy who was in first place in the Metropolitan Division, the Hurricanes, who just seem
Yeah.
to dominate the Devils at every stretch. It's been how long since the Devils scored a power play goal against the Carolina Hurricanes?
Oh,
They
they got
scored
one.
like
They got one in the last
they
game.
got one that was that was on the rush though, and it was at the end of the power play. Timo Meyer, I get it. I'm proud of you. It counts. But prior to that goal, it was how
Yeah, it
many
was
power
like
plays in a row going
I
back
think it was like
multiple seasons?
24,
Yeah,
24 or
it
something
was
like
going
that.
back into last season, that run where they were just stymieing us with their penalty kill. Um, that's bad. That's really, really bad. There is a entire level or two, maybe even three, between the Hurricanes and every other team in the Metropolitan Division. Even though the points still have them as only 6 points ahead, they've got 32 wins. Um, that's a lot more than any other team. The Devils have the third most wins in the division with 27, but with 24 regulation losses, that's the second most. Only the Rangers have fewer. They're minus 2022, excuse me, 2022. Their minus 22 goal differential is tied for the worst in the division with the Rangers. Again, a lot of that is conceding 9 to the Islanders on a given night, but that's not good, even if it was only minus 13. That would still be really, really bad. It would be the second worst in the division. So it's just been not a good enough product across the year. Even when they've gotten guys back, they haven't gotten them fully ready, and they just haven't been able to find the spark in other guys. And someone who might be able to light the fire underneath them, they honored at the Ring of Honor on Monday night's game against, or excuse me, Tuesday night's game against the Winnipeg Jets in Johnny McLean, who held the Devils forwards points record for a long time before Patrick Elias came around and broke a lot of those records. Um, I heard a great story Marty Brodeur was telling back when he was an assistant coach in the 2003 team where he would just rip into the guys. He almost hit Brodeur in the face with like a pen cap once. That was a funny story, but I mean, Johnny Mac wouldn't stand for this. If they had some more of that old school Devils feeling. I feel so bad listening to Kenny Danico on the broadcast. You can just tell some of this stuff, and Bryce Salvador too has just been eating away at those
Disgusted.
guys. They could use a little bit of that old school mentality, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, what a great speech. That might have been one of the better speeches of all like the players that have been honored, whether that's jersey retirement, Ring of Honor. I mean, just the way, he was talking to this team about what it takes and what they should be looking for at the end of his speech. I mean, that's what you want from an alumni players to kind of, you know, light the fire, like you said, under this team, and I hope they take his words like to heart. I mean, because they're good enough. This team has the talent to be one of the best teams in the conference. It's just they're not playing up to their level. So maybe a speech on a random Tuesday night in January like lights the spark and they go on a run the rest of the season. And I hope so. Losing that game on Tuesday night was a disappointment. You should be winning a game like that against Winnipeg on when you're honoring a legend like John McClain. So, I love the speech. He almost had me running through a wall after that speech. So, um, Johnny McClain, a legend. I'm glad he's in the Ring of Honor. Um, I hope there's a couple more people going in soon, like Larry Robinson. Larry Robinson should be next, and then Pat Burns. Get Pat Burns in there as well. He kind of deserves it. And then there's a couple players that we can talk about, and maybe a future episode about future Ring of Honor players. But yeah, what a guy Johnny McClain is. So I'm glad he got in.
Just, I like the idea of doing a Ring of Honor episode in the future because I love the idea. You can't retire everybody's jersey,
Mhm.
but
It's
you got
basically
enough
your Hall
space.
of Fame. It's
You got enough,
basically your team
yeah.
Hall of Fame.
You got enough space around the stadium to give guys some recognition. Coaches, players, executives. John D.
Yeah.
McMullen was the inaugural inductee to the Ring
Yeah.
of Honor. But yeah, 4 games before the Olympic break, Dan. It's a possible 8 points up for grabs. Tough games
Gotta
in
get
there,
6.
though.
Yeah.
You say you think what's the minimum you think they should
You
shoot
gotta
for
get
here?
6. You gotta get
6.
6. Yeah, you gotta get 6. If you could get 7, that's perfect. That's what I wanted kind of after they won the 3 games on the West Coast, I was hoping they get 7. But yeah, they if they get 7, they're golden, but you gotta get a 6 minimum. You gotta get 3 wins.
Devils have only gotten loser points in 2 games. Of their 26 losses, 24 of them have come in regulation. And I wrote an article on Sportsnet NJ Hockey Now not too long ago that with the Olympics coming up, I thought about the 3-2-1 IIHF point system again. And I
Yeah.
was thinking, we've got the Devils, they've got more wins than most of the division, even though they're all the way down in sixth place. And even then, they wouldn't give them a boost because they wouldn't be
They've
getting
won a
any.
lot, yeah.
They
And
they
overtime and
would
shootout.
overtime wins and the shootout. They've not lost in the shootout.
Yep.
Where was this in 2012, man? Remember that horrible, or 2013, 14? Remember that horrible run of shootouts? Like
A
if
couple
they
years.
had just won like 4 or 5 of those, they would have been a playoff team back then, man.
Yeah.
So it's crazy what time's changing what will do to you.
Yeah, Paul Cotter, man.
Paul Cotter. He's his silky mitts, but haven't seen a whole lot of that in 5-on-5 play. They got to get at least 6 points in these next 4 games, Dan. I totally agree with you. On home ice, defend your home ice better.
Mm.
Nashville is a team that's on the rise. If you can get 2 points at home against Nashville, you got to bank that, and then you got to go into Ottawa with some confidence, and then you defend home ice again before you go to the Olympics. They got a lot of guys heading to the Olympics. The Swiss guys, the Swedes, and they got, of course, Jack Hughes. I mean, this is a team that should really, really, really want to go into the Olympic break feeling good, not just because of the way the team needs it, but there are certain players, especially, who need to go into the Olympics playing their best hockey. That's all the time we have for Puck on the Parkway this week. For Dan Rebane, I've been James Burley. Hopefully, we'll have some trade news that Tom Fitzgerald secures sooner rather than later. We'll be talking about it on Puck on the Parkway. Do you think, Dan, Tom Fitzgerald gets a big time trade done before the Olympics?
I'll say yes.
I thought you were going to say yes, and I'll play devil's advocate. I'll say no. I think he gets it shortly after the Olympics. But time is ticking. Time is ticking. They're 5 points back in the division. It is time to start piling up some wins. It looked like they were going to do it in Western
Oh
Canada. They
my,
did it.
almost.
They
Almost.
couldn't bring it back home, unfortunately, with losses to the Kraken and then back at home to the Winnipeg Jets. But thanks again for watching, folks. For Dan Reben, I've been James Burley. This has been Puck on the Parkway. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.